Hello everyone, welcome back to the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and today we're on a waterfall adventure. No idea what to expect here. This waterfall isn't really marked. There's no trail. I don't even know the name of it. Never seen a picture of this waterfall, don't know much about it. And I think that going into places like that can oftentimes be a lot of fun, because most of the time when we photograph locations, we have so many preconceived ideas based on things that we see online, and it can be easy to get trapped by that. It can be easy to get in this cycle of subconsciously almost just replicating what you saw on the internet. And so if you can, a lot of the times doing a shoot like this ends up producing so much more unique results, because you can really just get away from all of that. That's what we're gonna do today.
After a super short hike, we caught our first glimpse of the falls.
All right, you guys, so here is the waterfall. So what I'm really doing here is kind of looking for different ways I could isolate patterns and shapes within the falls. I see some beautiful ferns up there on the rocks with some of the moss. Right in between, like right where my finger is, there's like a really nice shape where the rocks meet and some of the water is pouring down. And then what I thought would be kind of fun is up towards the top, there's some really nice water ribbons that we can capture as well. Once I've kind of played around with the waterfall, I think I'm gonna look around this water pool and some of the little creeks to see if we can find areas of light and shadow, areas of like specular light against the surface of the water, to see if we can create any cool intimate compositions. So got the 100 to 400 out here, and let's see what we can do to pick out some details. You can see here, this is at about 100 millimeters. And look at the little bits of light shining through, coming through the tree line. At first, when we first got here, the sun was completely obscured by the trees, and now we have some really nice side lighting. So I'm gonna play around with that a bit. Moving up towards the top, and right up here. Now I wanna cut off the top of the waterfall. I don't like that bright spot. But if we just kind of cut it off right in here somewhere, once I do that long exposure and we smooth out this water, that could be really fun to play around with. And what we're gonna do is use this filter, which is a combination of an ND64 and a CPL filter. See if we can get a better exposure here. I'm gonna take my ISO all the way down to ISO 100. I'm gonna change my f-stop a bit. And you know, for your long exposures, you just have to kind of play around. There's no like correct formula that's always gonna work. Some people like to do a really smooth exposure of waterfalls, like a 10-second to 20-second exposure, so that you don't see any texture at all. I find that that almost smooths out the water too much. I like to find something in between where you can still see some of the texture of the water. So we're gonna play around and see what we can do here with that.
So here's my first test shot, focusing on those spectacular light beams created through the falls. I realized after taking this one, I wasn't a huge fan of those ferns on the left side and some of the distracting elements. So in post, I decided to do a crop, placing the falls right in the middle of the frame. And I felt like this really helped out the balance of my shot. For my exposure, I chose to do a 1-second shutter speed. Depending on how close you are to the falls and how quickly the water is moving, you should experiment with your shutter speed quite a bit. Try some different quicker exposures, and then maybe some that are a little longer, so that when you're back at Lightroom, you can really analyze which one worked best.
Ooh, that's looking pretty cool. But I'm getting so much flare, kind of the downside of using some of these filters and not being able to use the lens hood with it. So I'm just gonna go ahead and cover this. And then you know what I'm gonna do as well, just to make sure that I'm not messing up the long exposure, I'm gonna go ahead and set it on a 2-second timer. Ooh, that's pretty fun. Try a couple more compositions here of this. And right now, I'm underexposing the scene a bit so that we're protecting all of the highlight detail that's hitting the falls. there's little light beams coming through the top of the waterfall right now, kind of like what we had down towards the middle. So I'm seeing if I could include these little rock areas where the water's, pouring down in sections, and then the light is kind of cascading through from the right side. So kind of just giving this a shot. I'm trying multiple compositions. I'm also twisting the polarizer to remove some of the reflections off of that rock. Ooh, that looks so good. Ooh.
So I thought this image turned out pretty nice with that beautiful light beam going through the frame, but one thing I wanted to try was to shift my perspective even further to get completely straight on with the falls. And here's what that ended up looking like. So personally, I felt like this frame worked way better than the previous one. I loved the position of the light ray here and the overall symmetry in the shot. I also felt like the ferns made a really nice framing element to this image, whereas in some of the previous shots, the ferns ended up being more distracting. After taking this one, I decided to move way further out to see what the waterfall would look like from the side.
All right, let's see if we can get a slightly different angle of this light coming down.
Shortly after capturing these, the light faded through the trees, so we decided to explore and find more details along the river. But before that, we had a quick snack of berries, which is honestly one of my favorite parts of hiking the Pacific Northwest.
This one looks like it's going to be sour. Whoa. Whoa, look at that one. Look at this one. So red. All right, so we made it out to a different part of the stream from the waterfall, and there's some really cool direct light that's hitting the creek. And if we kind of face into the light, you can get some really nice dynamic kind of specular sparkles against the surface of the water. You can see underneath the water and get a bunch of different textures. And so what I've done here is I've taken the telephoto lens off, and I have the 28 to 200 millimeter on here just so I can stay a little bit more versatile while I shoot this handheld. And now let me show you what this looks like. So check that out. The way that light shimmers off the water and leaves is so cool, especially if you can freeze the motion. But check this out. This is one of my favorite things. If we kind of aim the camera this direction, look down at the rocks, you can see how the water creates a really interesting texture. And so I'm going to take a few shots facing in this direction, kind of the specular light. I'm going to underexpose to really protect that highlight detail. And then I'm going to aim the camera in this direction and do some textural shots in here. Well, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to get my ISO really high. I need to have a high ISO. So again, I can prioritize having a super high shutter speed. And I'm also going to make the f-stop pretty high as well so that I can get more of the shot in focus. Ooh, this little patch in here is amazing. I got to get closer. There's a rock underneath the water that's creating this orange texture amongst the blue. It looks pretty cool. I want to get as close as possible without falling in the water.
So this is one of those photographs that I was pretty uncertain about while I was capturing it, but I love the way it ended up turning out. Underexposing the scene made those orange reflections almost appear like flames. And I also loved the color contrast between those subtle blues in the water and the orange tones. And these are some of my favorites to shoot because you create different worlds through your photography. Sure, this is just the surface of water with some reflections and some light, but thinking about this photograph in a different way transforms it into a different world. And now I'd love to hear from you. What do you see when you look at this photograph? I'd love to hear your interpretation on it. Please let me know in the comments.
Might try a few different variations here. Some at a higher ISO, some at a lower ISO, just to see what works. And then depending on how I change my angle, so I'm just like shifting my angle this way and now I'm standing more in the light and everything's a bit brighter against the surface of the water. I'm gonna come this way to see if I could change where I'm standing in the light. Whoop. Didn't happen.
Okay, so here's one of my favorite images of the sun reflecting off the water. And similarly to the previous photographs, I see something completely different than just the surface of a creek. When I look at this one, I see a star field with a solar system and planets, and maybe the sun right in the middle. And overall, this one was just a blast to take and to process. And looking at these photographs, it's a constant reminder that you can create compelling images anywhere with a little bit of vision and creativity.
That looks so cool. And then I think what I'm going to try now is some of the textures that are hitting the rocks over here with some of the direct light that's coming down. So let's give this a shot now. Oh yeah, that looks pretty cool. Yeah, it makes such cool shapes in the water.
Here's a few photographs that resemble abstract paintings. To create these ones, I'm utilizing the surrounding foliage and the sky to create the surreal, colored reflections in the water of both the blues and the greens. The very chaotic ripple effect in the stream gave a really nice pattern to work with here. And it was a lot of fun because walking along the stream, I could create different effects and different color patterns depending on what was being reflected in the water. After an amazing day of exploring, we decided to head to an old classic spot to relax, Waterfalls Falls. It's one of the most famous falls in the gorge, and for good reason. It's absolutely beautiful. And even though I've visited these falls countless times, I decided to try something new and do some black and white photography with my telephoto lens. And here's what I captured. Regardless of if you're visiting a fresh new location with no real idea of what it even looks like, or a familiar spot that you've been to or seen countless times, remember, there's always an image to be captured, and always a way you can express yourself and your creativity. Next time you're out there, make sure to look and explore all the different opportunities, even if it's just a puddle right at your feet. With that, I really hope you enjoyed this video. If you did enjoy it, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing to the channel for more. And if you want to learn more from me, you can check out my workshop page. I'm also starting to offer one-day private workshops in Oregon, so please contact me if you'd like to learn more. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.